Hello there, this is Lynn Everard, and it has been a while since I had a message for you. So on this about to be cold Saturday here in South Florida, wanted to share something with you about this concept of loving ourselves. Now, if you're like me, you hear people occasionally say about someone that they do not love themselves. And I don't agree with that. I think we all love ourselves. And there's a certain sense in which if even one person loves us, then we must love ourselves on some level. Because in order for someone to love us, they're going to be, at least in part, reflecting the love we have for ourselves back to us. I think a more accurate way of stating it would be that we all have parts of ourselves that we don't love yet. And yet is the key word. We all have a lot of things about ourselves that we can truly love about ourselves. But each of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, each of us, if we look in the mirror, we will find something, and we might call it our fatal flaw. Or if we don't see it in the mirror, we'll see it somewhere else. But many of us have this need to be perfect, thinking that if we're just perfect enough, not even good enough, but perfect enough, that then everything that life has been withholding from us will suddenly show up. And I'd like to challenge that idea today, because life isn't waiting for us to be perfect. Life doesn't need us to be perfect. Life simply needs us to look at ourselves with love and with compassion, to love those parts of ourselves that we already love, and to look at those parts of ourselves that we don't yet love, and find a way, find something in them that we can begin to appreciate, maybe tolerate, and over time, learn to love them. We don't grow up learning to hate ourselves. We're not born, I guess I should say, we're not born with this idea that there's parts of ourselves that we shouldn't love. As babies, we don't know any different. And our hearts don't know any different. So as we get older, we talk about concepts such as heartbreak. But your heart doesn't break, your mind does. It's actually mind break that we experience. Our heart always knows the truth. And the truth of every heart is love. The truth of your heart is love. The truth of my heart is love. And when we share that love with each other, we find out that the world's not such a bad place after all. So I want to talk a little bit more about this concept of the parts of ourselves that we don't yet love. And I would encourage you, you know what those parts are. Take some time, take one of them, sit down with yourself, look in the mirror if you have to, but look for something good in the part of you that you've never seen good in before. And of course, I'm talking about those aspects of ourselves that are simply things we don't consider to be perfect. I'm not talking about giving yourself permission to treat people poorly or unfairly. I'm talking about those parts within yourself, within ourselves, that we don't yet love. And as we do that, and if we really put the effort in, as we open our hearts and we move that judgment that can only come from our minds and replace it with unconditional love that can only come from our hearts, we will begin one by one to slowly bring those parts of ourselves that we don't yet love into the love that all the rest of us enjoys from us. So my encouragement for you today is to be honest with yourself about the parts of you that you don't love yet. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not a bad person. You're not faulty. You're not defective. You weren't born defective. No matter what you think about those parts of yourself that just aren't good enough. And ladies, I know you spend time looking in the mirror, looking for that one thing that's the reason that you don't love yourself, that's the reason that other people don't love you. And I can tell you for absolute certainty that that's not true. Because when you learn to love yourself, all of yourself, those parts that you haven't loved yet, then more and more love shows up in your life. At first, you'll think it's from other people. You'll be half right, because part comes from them and part comes from what they're mirroring back to you in the love that you have for yourself. So if you haven't set a New Year's resolution, maybe you don't believe in New Year's resolutions, maybe it's time to forget about New Year's resolution and have a revolution for yourself in the area of self-love and self-acceptance and self-compassion. And when you do that, and when you begin what I call the compassion cycle within yourself, and you have compassion for yourself, you'll find it easier to have compassion for others. And as you have more compassion for others, you'll find it easier to have compassion for yourself. And when you have compassion for yourself, you can look at yourself and you can take a deep breath and you can finally exhale. Because yes, you are lovable. You have never not been lovable. But sometimes we have these ideas in our heads that we're not. We have these ideas in our heads that there's a part of us that if only it were good enough, we would be lovable. I'm here to tell you that every part of you is good enough right now. You don't have to do a damn thing to change. And when you love the rest of yourself, the parts you don't love, you will find even more love within yourself and for yourself than you ever dreamed possible. If this is something that resonates with you, I invite you, contact me, share your story. You've heard, if you're following my videos, you've heard my story. I'd love to hear yours. I'd love to hear about the work you're doing to bring more self-love, more self-compassion, and more self-worth to yourself. As always, I hope you found some value in this, and I wish you an amazing day and an amazing life filled with love that comes from the inside of you. Thanks.